Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Prairie Banana, and I'm here with TG Zen, the founder of pTGC and UFO, Crypto Kong, and Cryptographics is going to be jumping in whenever he's available.
Good morning, guys.
So none of this is financial advice. Just want to say that at the beginning, but we are going to pull the curtain back on what we think these tokens could do this cycle. So Zen, do you want to get us started out and kind of give us an idea where we are, where these tokens are in the cycle, and just kind of give us a base level, if you would?
Yeah, I also wanted to touch base on on the moon math in general real quick. Every scenario that we kind of talk throughout this throughout this YouTube stream, they are just mathematical predictions on what happens if A plus B equals C. So this is no guarantee of the future, but it's kind of just equations that we can predict what is possible in the future if certain situations like success of the blockchain or success of these tokens come true. Mathematically, we can predict where they're landing. So I just kind of wanted to make that statement before we keep moving forward. So where we are with pTGC and UFO, I forget what market caps and prices we were at last time we did this stream. I know it was a month or two ago, but pTGC and UFO are both up from that. And actually the X multiplier has already played out since the last time we've done this stream. Not as large as what we believe it will be in the future, but we can actually look at the data and see how it's been playing out in the more recent times. When we first started talking about the X multiplier a lot, it was kind of in like July of this year. PulseChain was kind of at a bottom. pTGC was hitting a low due to the consolidation of PulseChain. And currently from that point, we're up 16x on pTGC. And PulseChain is up not even 3x. Yeah, not even 3x. So in that instance, there's a basic example of the X multiplier playing out. We've gotten a 3x from PulseChain, but we've done X's against PulseChain already. So we're able to multiply those two together, and that's ultimately why we're sitting at a 16x right now. In the previous micro bump up of PulseChain, it got to like 0.0002. 0.0002, yeah, 0.0002. We went up 40x in that time when PulseChain did roughly a 5x move. So it's interesting that we have like that past data. This was like in February that we were kind of basing on what could happen in the future. And we're kind of in this future right now. We're in the present, actually. And we're seeing it play out very, very similar, but amplified. We're actually outperforming that previous really nice run up. And I think that's due to the tokens being better distributed. I think we're going to have a bigger run up from Pulse coming, which is obviously bullish for us. And then we also have more of our supply bought and burned as well. So in this last 10 months, we've actually gotten a lot stronger. So I think this X multiplier is actually going to play out a lot heavier than it did previously. And it's just going to be interesting to watch and run these numbers.
Thanks for that. Yeah, can you see me like grinning ear to ear? I'm so excited about this ecosystem. And there are sizable players entering this ecosystem recently saying they don't understand why more people don't know about this. And I'm like, yeah, man, that's exciting. And more people are going to learn about this ecosystem, these two tokens in particular, pTGC and UFO. Okay, what I'm going to do is share my screen. And I'm going to go into Kong's site, which is lookintoptgc.com. And I'm going to show you guys the tax allocations for pTGC and UFO. And why is
be Let's use fee.
What's that?
Let's use fee.
I don't understand. I didn't hear you.
Nobody likes the word tax, Prairie. Nobody likes the word tax.
Yes. Yeah, fee.
Fee on transaction token.
Yeah. I mean, and we earn rewards, right, from those fees. Yeah, I'm all for it. So the pTGC tax allocation for the last 24 hours, fee allocation. What? Let's change this on the site. Why am I excited about these fee allocations? Because yesterday, in the last 24 hours, there was, let's call that $37,000 of fee allocations. But if you look at it in a 7-day time frame, that's $259,000 times a month. That's over $1 million in fee allocations in a month just on pTGC alone. And when the system 10x's, that'll be $10 million in a month just in fee allocations. And of course, we're burning squid positions every day of pTGC. UFO, scroll down to its fee allocations, and it also is burning squid positions every day. And UFO, of course, burns pTGC. Its fee allocations the last 24 hours was $22,000, and that would be $154,000 in a week. That's exciting. And when the system 10x's, $1.5 million. So anything else you guys think I should review on the dashboard part of this site? Or do you have any comments?
I just think paying attention to the cumulative amount of liquidity that's part of the system's liquidity web at this point is something that everybody should be paying attention to now and kind of screenshot it in your mind. Because as Richard's core tokens, that index of tokens continues to move up, the system's going to benefit from that reflexivity in liquidity pools. And we could be looking at, 46 million in liquidity with UFO on a 2x. We could be looking at 40 million with pTGC on a 2x. And at that point, the system starts to supercharge because now the bots and the AMM, the market makers have to move twice as much capital to rebalance the pools.
That's so true. Okay, I'm going to go over the reflections tab.
I got something real quick before we move on after here, Banana. If you don't mind. I just wanted to remind the audience that those numbers you were just going through, which was like the 22K in 24 hours or the 150K in a week, if you multiply it out, or even once let's say PulseChain does a 10x, that 1.5 mil, what we're projected to do, that's actual value brought into the system. And that value being brought into the system isn't by a user buying into the ecosystem. This is actually value generated from the machine that isn't by a user coming in. So there isn't a user that's expecting to make money and then get out in the future, right? So a user, when they come in and they buy or swap for some UFO or pTGC tokens, they now hold these tokens and they're expecting eventually one day to get some form of something out of the ecosystem. But this system that we're value generating, there is no user expecting to get that value out. It's actually generating it from the rest of the market and bringing it to the current holders of the ecosystem. And at a 10x from here, let's say 1.5 a week, that's a lot of value generated from outside sources, not dependent on users coming in. It's just very interesting when you think about it from that outside look, that bird's eye view. That's a very strong metric.
Okay, I'm going to flip over to the reflections tab. I might need your help on this one, Kong.
Let's see. Just make sure to throw on the experimental mode and just click try demo.
Okay. Ooh, I like that. Calculate yields. So tell us, Kong, what this is going to do before we actually look at it.
So yeah, I think today's the moon math stream, so I think not only are we going to be talking about price, but we'll also talk a little bit about yields and such. So with pTGC and UFOs, as you guys kind of know, the yields and the reflections are volume dependent, right? So as more volume happens, there's more fees that get put through the system, and as more fees get put through the system, there's more yields and more rewards that get distributed out to holders, stakers, and lockers with pTGC, and in UFO LP providers and holders, right? So this is kind of a cool little simulator where you can track like the holding reflections, kind of extrapolate it out for your APY given any volume from like $0 to 50 million, and you can kind of get a feel for in the future what might the APYs look like. And again, this is kind of like at the current prices, kind of everything staying the same, just besides the volume changing. What would the APYs look like? And we can do a few examples, kind of taking a look at like what they would actually look like, right? With once the volume starts to ramp up on PulseChain, it already has, right? We've seen UFO pull out like a few $1 million volume days in a row, right? So it's been doing extremely well. But even if the volume cranks up even more, like the yields could be quite insane. So yeah, you can scroll down a little bit more, take a look
Okay.
at.
We had a good conversation, Zen, on the spaces on Monday night. Perhaps we can repeat that. We talked about if Pulse runs up whatever number of X's, 100X, and then pulls back 90% into the bear market, what would it look like for this wallet, on a monthly yield earnings basis? Perhaps we can repeat that.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, go through a few examples as well and scroll down a little bit more, and I think you'll be able to, yeah, we can see some more. Yeah, you'll be able to see their APYs here. You can see exactly like how much this person would be earning on a day, how much this person would be earning in a month, how much this person would be earning in a year, right? In terms of dollars and in terms of percent. This particular wallet is a shark, so you can kind of see like it's like 4 shark positions there, right? So yeah, it's definitely a bigger holder, but it kind of goes to show like even if and what experimental volume is this at again?
$5 million.
5 million. So yeah, even at $5 million in volume, I mean, this person's taking home, what was it, $64,000 a year in yield in pTGC. And keep in mind that that's not inflation, right? That's deflationary yield, right? It's right. It's not. I think TG Zen brings up a good example where all the yield in the system's backed by other rewards and other kind of fees that get distributed among the system. So even if people wanted to sell like their yield or kind of take profits on some of their yield, it's already fully backed in the system, right? Like you're not taking more value out than what was already put in. So yeah, you can see like $64,000 as well. Like that is, I think that's double what the average salary is for an American citizen, and that's in pTGC yield, right? At $5 million in volume. So who knows how much volume these coins could do, right? But even right now we're at 1 million, and we can already see like how
Kong.
like how go ahead.
And just to clarify to everyone, this is just the holding reflection. So if you're staking,
right,
you should be receiving 150% roughly more than what that number is. So if it's $64,000 at that volume, it would actually be more on the lines of like, I believe 150K per year.
Exactly.
If you're staking.
So can you adjust that real quick for a whale position so larger players can see what that looks like that are looking at the system?
Scroll down, Prairie. And then you can see, scroll down a little bit more, check out the Poseidon, and scroll down for the whale as well. Yeah, you can check it out here. So you can see if you're a bigger player as well, and you can get a feel for what the yields might be like. And keep in mind, guys, like this is looking to pTGC. It is a premium feature, but you can input any wallet address, and you can kind of get an exact sense, and you can play with more examples and stuff as well. But you can see here for like the whales and such, that's $431 a day, right? 157K a year, and like we're saying, if they're staked, that's probably close to or over $300,000 a year in yield on PTGC, right? So like, I guess nobody knows what's really going to happen. Nobody knows where the volume is going to be, but you can, I mean, you can play with the calculator. You can try out some different volumes and stuff. Maybe try like $10 million or $15 million to give like another kind of example for, because we're doing moon math as well, right? So might as
Yeah, I
well.
think it's important too, Colin, to say that when we talk about in quotes it being backed, the more correct term is that it's being paid for, right? When we think about backing, that's one type of a thought process, but the fees from the fee on transactions are paying for the yield. It's new revenue coming in. It's not that we're backing something with something else. It's just being paid for with every transaction, which is phenomenal.
It's actually both, right? So the yield you're getting is getting paid for by that transaction, but within that same transaction, more PLS is going into the LP pools to also back it. So you're not only getting the reflections and the reward literally from a transaction right then making the purchase, but there's also more PLS going into the LP pools, making it to where it's like almost double backing the reward that's paid out.
Right. I was just saying that speaking specifically on this page, we're talking about the rewards, period. Right. That those rewards are being paid for by the fees on the transactions. The fact that there's more going into the LPs to just back the underlying value of the system is just a cherry on top.
Okay. Anything else on this page that we should cover, or like UFO? Let's do that
I
next.
would like to 1 second, Banana. So as the price of PLS increases, that increases our liquidity web. And as our liquidity web increases, it's going to increase our volume because now the market maker bots are going to have to move more value to fix the prices. Previously, me and Banana were talking about, like, let's say PulseChain does do 100x, but then a bear market kind of comes along and the average throughout a 4-year period is 50x from here. So if you kind of take in the average of the high and then maybe it goes to a low, but let's say in a 4-year period from now, the average is 50 times what it is today. Ultimately, our volume should be 50 times what it is today too, because if our LPs are 50 times bigger, that means the market makers need to move 50 times the amount of volume. Today, I think we're at, like, I would have to look what we are at volume today.
720,000.
Okay. So you can times that by 50, which would, let's say, be roughly 30 million or so. You could just kind of pull it over there.
36 million.
36 million. So if we pull that over to 36 million, and again, this is moon math, that could be a possibility of an average volume per day. Mathematically, due to our LP pools getting so big, this is actually possible because the market makers will have to move that amount of money. And now you can actually look at what these positions could be worth. And remember, this is just reflections. So it's actually roughly at least 100% more than this. So for a whale, what does a whale pay at that rate?
You're looking at like 300K. This is 150.
I think a whale's
No, it should be
1.1
more.
million yearly
Yeah.
for just
Yeah.
holding reflections.
Mhm.
Yeah, so if you're getting 1 million just for holding, you're going to be getting over 2 million if you're staking. And again, that just going back to what Mando was saying is all those rewards are actually paid for prior to you receiving them. You don't get paid them unless they're actually paid for by the system and then rebacked again due to the other features of the smart contract, which is just very unique to our system. So you can see how the success of PulseChain actually makes the holders of both pTGC and UFO, the passive income that they're receiving, really start to increase. And then what would the APY of that be if you scroll up, Banana?
Sure. And for the audience, The other positions just go down by a factor of 10. We should probably highlight some of the smaller positions to just make it easier for the audience. APY is 91.9%.
Okay, so then that's only for holding. So if you're staking, my guess would be you'd be around 200% APY.
That's nuts, man. That's a really good yield.
And that's on a deflationary token where that yield isn't paid out in more supply coming to existence. That yield has to be bought. But yeah, scroll down to one of the smaller positions.
Dolphin position, that would be 11. I'm gonna include the staking yield. So it would be about 25,000 a year. Squid position, 2,500 a year.
Cool.
Then a squid, just so you know, is 3 million pTGC. Dolphin is 30 million pTGC.
And I think it says how much that cost, right?
Yes, it does. So 30 million pTGC right now is $12,000. And a squid obviously is going to be $1,200.
Cool.
But like you said, that's on a deflationary token where your position is always going to be increasing. It can never decrease as long as you hold.
What's interesting there too is, if you think about these positions and you're basically getting reflections of like 100% yield. And if you go back to that shark that had basically 40% of a whale position, and essentially you're getting 2.5x. Like if you're that shark and you're growing by 150%, and that's on a yearly basis, you could literally become a whale by the time this whole year comes, because the amount of pTGC being burnt, the amount of reflections you're getting, if you're staking, it goes up. So by the time you actually get this level of reflections, your reflections could have even increased more because your share of the total tokens has gone up. And so you now have a higher capture rate of that total yield. So you're basically growing on growing on growing at this point too. And that's a big thing to understand over time, as how you grow in your rewards.
And graphics, the crazy piece to this is that you can technically sell the yield that you're earning every day for that full year. And at the end of the year, you have a larger percentage of the circulating supply than you did at the beginning of the year, because the tokens were being burned out of existence, which means that you could sell your yield all year if you chose to, instead of parlaying it back for a larger piece of the pie. And at the end of the year, you have a larger percentage of the supply, which grants you a larger percentage of the yield pool.
That's hilarious. You can sell your way to be a whale.
Obviously, if you're compounding that, it's going to happen much faster. But
of course, it's
just a very nice piece to the protocol.
Yeah, it's really cool to see these numbers in real time and really think about it and kind of paint that picture, because it's easy to get lost in the numbers when you're thinking about liquidity numbers and how that affects the price and then how the yield. But to see it plain as day like this, like shout out to you, Kong. This is a great site actually. I think this is a really valuable tool for people to be able to come in and actually look at the numbers and how it will actually work over time, how it's working currently. So shout out to you, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, Kong. Just thank you so much. It's a wonderful website.
Yeah. Very, very well laid out, very visual, very easy to understand. It doesn't seem like you need to know the ins and outs of blockchain technology. You just click a few buttons and it all pops up for you.
Many of us have dreamed about having something like this, and it is so much better than what we even dreamt about. It's awesome, dude.
I'm glad, guys. I'm glad.
So I have one more
UFO real quick.
Okay, yeah, of course.
Oh yeah, UFO should be interesting.
Okay, what would you like to do for volume?
Leave it at the 36 million.
Okay.
Yeah, keep it even.
There you go. Good idea. Wow, yearly return. It gets crazy. I love UFO. I'm just going to say that out loud.
Oh my God.
Yearly yield for a shark, $185,000. Now, is this pure reflections? What
just
about
reflections?
Okay, so we don't have the LP rewards built in, or
not in this page yet.
Okay.
And this is based on how much volume, Kong?
36 million.
Okay, running through per day.
per
Yep.
day.
Okay, so let's look at some of these positions down here. Let's start with the shark and dolphin. So a shark, which costs right now $57,000. The annual yield in dollar terms would be $149,000. A dolphin, which is $5,700 right now, annual yield, I'm going to call that $15,000. And squid, costs $600, annual yield $1.5 thousand, $1,500.
And keep in mind, those theoretical yields are just if you are at the minimum requirement for that given league, right? So as the token's deflationary, and if you buy a position in between like a squid and a dolphin, you might actually receive you'll receive yield that's in between that theoretical yield between a squid and a dolphin, right? So keep that in mind as well, that for that squid yield, it's just the baseline if you're a squid, just if you're like baseline, right? What you could receive, and if you're in between like a squid and a dolphin or a dolphin and a shark, you can expect yield in between a dolphin and a shark. For example, scroll up to the current tab, and yeah, you can see your daily yields, and then you can see the theoretical yields. This person has, like, I think it was like 1.2% or 1.1% of a shark position, so you can see they're making like, I don't know, 1.2%, or sorry, yeah, 20% more. Yeah, 1.2%. Yeah, 1.2 times more than just the baseline threshold than what a
Sure.
baseline shark makes.
Thank you for making that point about the different positions, because this is just a single position. I look at positions as like you can have 5 squid positions, and then
Yeah.
you can just multiply that number by 5.
Exactly, right? So, and then yeah. So yeah, if you have like 8 positions or whatever, exactly. So
Let's get that to 5 million in volume. Let's just bring it down, way down, and see
Okay.
something, just around a 5x from here or something like this.
Okay, $5 million in volume.
I'd like to see this compared to pTGC too. We scale this down just to keep things nice and equal, so we can have a reference point either way.
Sure. Okay. We'll do that. Let's go to the dolphin squid. Dolphin would be at $5 million in yield. I mean, in volume. A dolphin would bring in $2,000 a year. $2,000 a year. Squid, $200 a year.
And the larger positions, the ones up above, we didn't see those ones.
Sure. The shark, $21,000 a year. Now, mind you, if you have 5 shark positions, that'd be 120. No, it'd be $100,000. And then whale, $207,000.
So it's like
Tom,
30-something%, right?
on the site, just as I'm looking at it, in white you got the big bold, and then underneath it's kind of hard to see. I don't know if you could, if it'd be easier to change that to a different color scheme so it pops off. Just a thought.
all right, I'll keep it in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, I know Kong's taking notes. Okay, so that was UFO at $5,000. I mean, $5 million in volume per day. Now let's go back to pTGC to get the comparison. Same wallet address. A whale would, and I'm just going to double these numbers, yearly, $300,000. Shark, and this is a single shark, yearly would be $30,000. Dolphin, $3,000 in a year. Okay, if we're done with this, I think you're next, Kong.
So, Kong, I got a question for you. This will just be a fun question, just because I always see your mind kind of chirping in the background. What do you think is the probability that after PulseChain does a round trip on this first cycle, whatever amount of success it has, that this protocol will be sitting at a $5 million per day in volume? What kind of probability would you put
Probably
to
a
that?
very good probability. I don't know if I don't know about any absolute value on that, but there's probably, say it's probably more likely than not that you'd see something like UFO, if especially if PulseChain's doing extremely well. I don't see why you wouldn't even have more than something like $5 million in volume, right? So
Well, something to think about here too is like, what ask the question like, okay, well, what creates volume, right? Volatility. Volatility works in two directions. So you're getting into it to paint this, at least the way I'm thinking about it is you are going to have this begin when pulse chain rises and when it all the way to when it gets to its top. And you also are going to have that same reflexivity back downward as people sell and it corrects, which is going to create a similar volume on the way down. And so you're going to have not just the way up, but the whole, basically both sides of this the market that PulseChain is going to rise and fall from, that's going to be creating this volume. So it's not just the upward momentum that's going to create this, but it's, and you're also going to have at the bottom, you're going to have a higher floor likely from where you are, which is going to just have the overall volume tick up in general on average. So this is important to understand. Like, it's not just the way up that's going to create the volume. It's the way down too.
Yeah, because just for your conversation piece, we know what the volume of pTGC was doing, before anybody trusted it, at the most horrible, most unfavorable time on the blockchain. And it was doing between, 50 and 100,000 in volume, basically at the doldrums of darkness on chain. So if PulseChain gets unleashed, has a massive successful run this cycle, the chain's never going to come back down to where it was then. It will land higher, just like Polygon did, just like AVAX did, just like all these later ones did. And then obviously you have a lot more usage on the chain, even when you're at the bottom of the next bear. So that's why it's important to just kind of think, okay, if the worst of the worst was, 100,000 in volume, where does it land after its first cycle? It has to be much higher than that if PulseChain is successful.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to point out in like the standard 4-year cycle, I think those 4-year cycles are going to probably be less volatile now that we're getting more adoption to crypto. And then also like those lows of the lows that you're talking about, Mando, like how many months out of the 4-year cycle are those lows? Like, is that a 6-month period out of the 4 years? Well, then that's only an eighth of the time. So for the rest of the 7/8 of that 4-year cycle, you shouldn't be at the lows of the lows. Of course, you're not going to be at the highs of the highs. Like, that's only a 6-month period in its own. But there should be a lot of room in between those 2 points where it could be at 10 mil, 15 mil, maybe
100%.
maybe not at that 36 mil. That might be high numbers, but for the rest of the 3 years between those high and low points, we might be looking at a range in between those high and low points in volume as well.
Absolutely. And like graphics and I were talking before the stream about a lot of the things that we have been talking about, at least since I came into pTGC, which was back in January, February timeframe, have played out, which makes me very excited for what we've been talking about from today forward. It's kind of the history kind of makes it stand to reason that the future at least is somewhat going to play out the way we are, let's just call it what it is, speculating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just talking to someone about this. Is every prediction that we've actually made into the future based on mechanics and math have actually come true with this protocol. And in crypto, that pretty much never happens. Everyone makes these predictions in these hopes that they get to certain points, and they ultimately never do, because those predictions aren't actually based on mechanics and machines and math. They're based on human interaction, and you cannot control human interaction. So these speculations that we're all making into the future right now are not actually based on human interaction. They're based on mechanical interaction. And we all know where the world is headed. with robots, AI, we do know that mechanical interaction is more dependable than human interaction. And that's why human jobs are getting replaced. That's why robots are assembling things now. It's easier to predict the future with these things.
Well, and the beauty for that as well is, this is just the technical side of, how it's designed, the fundamentals, what the math says. And this all gets compounded and accelerated when you include human interaction and human emotion. Because if the price chart's going up because of just the fundamentals, right? It's just being dragged up due to the actual way that it's been being set up. And then you have humans coming in and be like, I want this thing as well. I mean, you get into scenarios where moon math can't predict. You have to moon math your moon math to really understand how to get into it. And this is true. I mean, this is the cool thing about this system that you don't really have in too many other places with the setup that happened at the beginning of something that can do numbers we all dream of, and it compounds itself, and it's really cool. And to your point, it's like it is rare to see, because Kong and I have been part of like Hedron and Icosa back in the day, and we had all sorts of math and models that were coming about how it was going to do, and there's so many tokens that all of us have paid attention to and done math on that. Little bits of it have been accurate, but not all of it has shown time and time again to come out or come into fruition. And for me at least, this is one of the very, 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 very few times with this ecosystem where you can point to math, you can model, and you can watch. And what happens? Pretty much to a T what you expect based on the math alone, and it's amplified by humans. So it's unique, it's special, and it's really, really cool to be a part of it this early before the rocket fuel's even been turned on.
It's a very good point.
Kong, are you ready to present?
Yeah, I want to share, before I start with some of the calculations, I'll share a quick RH clip, just kind of giving context for how we're doing the calculations in the first place. So let me know if you guys can hear this. I believe it should be set up so you guys can hear.
Why do all cryptocurrencies go up and down?
Yep, you're good.
So the way the automated market maker works is that the thickness is the same on both sides. So your slippage is about the same when you buy or sell. It doesn't matter which way you go. So what we've done is, if your coin is only traded versus one other thing, if no one ever trades again, if no one ever trades Hex for Ethereum again, the price chart of Hex USD will equal identically the price chart of ETH USD, because they're interchangeable. You can exchange them at any time you want. And so what you discover is that as long as there's some liquidity bonding together two pairs of currencies, then their charts will be exactly identical if there's just one market, right? Or if it's the largest market by far. And then in order to shift that chart, right? So like Hex is up 12x versus Bitcoin in about 3 months. It does that by shifting the curve up and up and up. But when people stop trading, the ETH chart equals the Hex chart. And then as people trade Hex for ETH, add Hex and remove ETH, or add ETH and remove Hex, it shifts the location of the lock of the bond. And so the strength of this bond is equal to the liquidity. To prove this, right, like here's a falsifiable thesis for you. So my thesis is that the chart shape of a currency, when it's traded versus another currency, is equal unless something exerts its will in that system. And so imagine a system with infinite liquidity. Imagine that on the Hex Ethereum pair, there's an infinite amount of Ethereum and an infinite amount of Hex. And no matter how much you buy or sell or either one, the price doesn't change. Well, then their ratio would always be the same. And then their price chart would always equal the ETH USD price chart. And until some other larger market appears and it gathers more liquidity, because the thicker market can shove around the littler markets, because you can arbitrage the thicker market into the little markets and bring them up, but you can't arbitrage a little market into a big market. You run out of energy. So long story short is I discovered why, in fact, all of these things move up and down together. And it's because they're all traded versus each other on the order book. And if you don't like them moving all up and down together, you have to execute your will on the order book to try and set some other thing as the thing that matters, like USD say, and then you'll find you run out of money because the order book's thicker than you are. And so these things that are traded against each other tend to move lockstep and price together. I thought that was a really interesting discovery.
So I think some of you guys can already probably see what we're getting at with this, but that was a Hart's Law explainer. So that was Richard explaining Hart's Law, and it kind of goes into what we're going to be talking about today, right? And exactly what RH says is that if you have crypto to crypto, like volatile asset to volatile asset, cryptocurrencies paired within the AMM, those two charts by like this is exactly how AMMs work, and like it's not debatable at this point. Like this is how the AMMs work. This is like the math behind it. Once you pair those two tokens in with liquidity, by definition, those prices, like they're locked, right? Let's say hex to pulse, for example. I think right now it was like last time I checked, like one hex gets you like 300 or so pulse or something like this. So that's what we're talking about, right? And those ratios will stay fixated. They will not change. The only thing that can change the ratio is people trading in and out the pair, in and out the pair. So keep that in mind, right? When we're talking about these moon math calculations, we'll do one example here real quick with pTGC and PLS. But this is what RH is talking about with this base price here. This is if nobody trades in the pair, which again, like chances are you're probably going to have people trading. We've seen pTGC have the track record of outperforming Pulse. So that's why we have the X factor here, right? And that's effectively what we're taking a look at is, and I'll add an X factor so we can take a look and see how the prices change here. But yeah, you can see here, your base price is if, like Richard Hart is saying, there's no trading done in the order book. The pTGC price equals the WPLS price, and the WPLS price goes to 5 cents. This is where you'll see pTGC, right? But then we add X factors to this, right? Because this is what we've seen in reality, right? pTGC outperforming PLS, things like pTGC outperforming PDI at times, things like UFO outperforming PDI, right? That's your X factor. That's from humans trading in and out the pair. But other than that, like this base price is also going to be kind of your lockstep Hart's Law price. Like this is going to be your base Hart's Law prices as I would describe it. And this is going to be like after you have your X factors applied. So depending on what happens, right, whether pTGC does a 10x versus Pulse or a 5x versus Pulse, like you're gonna see that ratio change, and that's going to change the USD price of pTGC. So I hope that made sense for all the viewers and stuff. Also pull up these disclaimers so you can kind of get a sense. Like I think the most important one here is control your emotions. Just don't invest based on FOMO, right? Yeah, with those kind of disclaimers and explainers out the way, I might start getting into some moon math here.
One thing I wanted to point out, you're saying that you get the X multiplier by human interaction, like humans buying up or selling down the pTGC chart.
Humans or bots or like
yeah.
anyone trading, right? So
like
yeah.
The majority of our trades are actually all bots due to our system. So a lot of our amplification to our system comes from the bots themselves, not only human interaction, which gives us a advantage to do X's over the blockchain itself. Because with every single transaction, we're buying and burning and buying and rewarding and buying and LPing.
Right. So when in the video, just real quick, when Richard said that unless a larger player or a larger entity, in quotes, exerts his will onto the chart, right? Like the other day, we saw $200,000 come into the pTGC chart, and it just immediately jumped it by I think it was 10, 12% or something like that. Now you have an instant jump in pTGC, and if nobody sells or buys into that chart, that's the new lock in that pair. It's the same thing as if somebody sells, right? If somebody personally sells, okay, and then it stops, there's the new lock in that pair. But the entire time, the unique thing about this system is whether somebody is exerting their will to the upside or exerting their will to the downside to where the pair finds a new lockstep ratio, it's generating massive amounts of revenue that goes right back into the system, which is unique to this system.
Kong, I think you're muted.
All right. Yeah, we'll get back into the moon math as well here, but Prairie, I don't know if off the top of your head you know like what the numbers are with pTGC and PDI. Like I don't know if there's like is there like an easy X factor for a PDI pair?
Perhaps Zen can speak to that, because I don't know.
I wouldn't say there's an easy X factor to it, but we do know like the idea of PDI going to $1, right? So that's an easy number to work with, and you can plug that into your formula. And the thing with PDI going to $1, right? Like once it gets to $1, that's it. If that narrative is true, again, we don't know if this narrative is completely true, but we do know where that stops. But pTGC and UFO actually do not need to stop at that point. They could literally just keep doing X's over that infinitely for the next 100 years if PulseChain is still around, right? But let's just for example purposes, let's say we outperform PDI by a 10x for fun. And this can come from the buy and burns of our system. This can come from user interaction, or this can come from our other LP pools outperforming the X's of PDI as well. So we have 3 separate levers that can actually make us outperform certain assets. For an example, in this example, PDI.
I would ask the question too, and I don't know if this can be done. Maybe you guys can correct me here if I'm out to lunch. But the one thing I'm seeing with this is this doesn't account for all the individual pools going up, not relative to one another, but going up on their own. And this is only accounting for one pool dragging up UFO or pTGC, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it's looking at one pair.
Go ahead there.
For with like PLS, for the last year and a half, PLS actually has underperformed all of our other connected tokens. For an example, Inc. or Hex, even eHex at times, PDI, PulseX. So when you compare to PLS, and let's say PLS does a 5x, but let's say the rest of our LP web did a 10x. You actually get a mean of all of your liquidity webs as your base X multiplier. So it's the average. And it does matter like how big these LP pools are also. So like, let's say half of our liquidity was PLS and the other half of our liquidity was all of the other RH tickers. And the mean of all the other RH tickers, the other half did a 10x and then PLS did a 5x. Well, we would end up with an X multiplier of 7.5. We would get the mean of everything, the average. And then if you think about it, if you're only comparing to PLS, we already have an X multiplier over PLS with no buys on our chart. So we're already X multiplying ourselves with just because we're connected to assets that are outperforming the blockchain. So what we get is an X multiplier on an X multiplier, and then we get whatever X's we do on top of that. So it like really starts to multiply out. You're 100% correct.
And that's before deflationary, and that's before trustless yield.
Yeah,
it's hilarious.
The
it just
easiest
keeps adding.
example is RH has a tweet out there, and he talks about the reflexivity of Hex. And he talks about, okay, well, let's say PulseChain does a 10x, and a portion automatically Hex is all tied to PulseChain for the most part. So Hex will get dragged up that 10x as well if you take out all outside forces. So it's 1-to-1. You know, it just got dragged up that 10x. But what if a portion of that value moves down into Hex? Well, now Hex has the X multiplier effect against Pulse. And since Hex has a smaller liquidity pool than Pulse, because Pulse is the dog and Hex would be the tail in this example, it actually, Hex gets the X multiplier. In the example I think that RH gave, he made it to where Hex did a 4x over PulseChain. So then now you're at like a 40x of Hex and a 10x of PulseChain. Well, what's interesting for us is we're almost just as tied with Hex as we are PulseChain. So we would be getting the mean in between those two, which would, be the average between the two, which is like a 25 or, whatever. So we would already be up 2.5x over the blockchain just due to the connected assets that we have, the sustainable projects on the blockchain. And it's just super powerful because there isn't another blockchain where people have created these scenarios. There isn't a blockchain where you got all these amazing assets at the bottom where they can actually multiply off each other. I always give an example this. So RH made EHEX, do a 10,000x when he was paired with Ethereum, when Ethereum was already out for like 5 years. Do we really think that he can't make pHEX do a crazy amount of X's when he was able to pair it with PulseChain at the bottom of his blockchain where he actually has complete control of the levers? Like, it's actually unthinkable how many levers he could pull to make these things move. He never had those levers on Ethereum, only the tokens that he held. But he has so many unlimited levers here on PulseChain at the bottom, literally a restart on Ethereum. And then we're paired with it all at the beginning, obviously.
Mm-hmm. This is why no matter what ecosystem you're part of, no matter what coins you love, it would be a really bad idea, in my opinion, not financial advice, not life advice, not any advice, to fade PulseChain and this ecosystem that we're talking about now in pTGC and UFO. It would be a really bad idea, in my uneducated opinion.
Yeah, because what in a nutshell, looking at this, and we've had 13 months of watching the data coming in. What the pTGC ecosystem represents is essentially a performance amplifier on the RH index. Because of the way that it generates revenue, because of the way that it capitalizes on volatility, because of the way that it's constantly burning itself out of supply, it's able to, while giving you a claim check on the RH index of tokens, it's able to outperform it while it's delivering you yield. And the price floor is constantly moving up. But if you're an RH maxi like I am, right, you own an asset that is a true claim check right back on those very tickers. It's just absolutely phenomenal.
100%.
Graphics.
You want to pull up my screen one last time here, Prey Banana?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I don't even think we ever finished with Kong.
Okay.
Sorry, Kong. Sorry, brother.
Yeah. Kong,
That's what
Moon
Moon Math's about, right? Everyone's
It's
going
20 minutes
crazy.
later, but we're ready now.
And then perhaps after this, Graphics, if you could talk about your illustration with the balloons pulling up a rock. I think that's a home run illustration to explain the liquidity bonding and how assets move together.
Yeah. Let's do that right after we go through Kong stuff.
Okay.
All right, sweet. Also, I wanted to pull up the chart as well. This is pTGC versus pDI. You can kind of notice that there is some volatility, but you can kind of see here pTGC has it kind of looks like it is the chart that's kind of trending up a little bit versus pDI. So I don't know if this trend is going to continue, but I mean, just think about pTGC and then think about pDI, right? Because I think these are right now probably some of your top narratives on PulseChain. But pDI doesn't pay you any yield, right? pDI isn't deflationary. In fact, I think it's the opposite. And I think you have people, I don't exactly know. Maybe that's more with USDC and stuff, but I think people are able to mint some of the coins and stuff like this, right? So pTGC 100% deflationary. You get paid interest, right, for holding, and if you want to stake, you can stake as well. So, and not only that, you get the price appreciation, right? So when we're talking about pDI going to $1, right, just the baseline, right, if pTGC were to match the performance of pDI, right, not outperform, not underperform, you would see pTGC at 2 cents, right? And if we're talking like this chart, right, we've seen, like, look at this, right? We've seen it kind of explode. I think these were probably some of the toughest times as well to kind of outperform some of the altcoins, like early days in PulseChain. Like it was not easy to do mad gains, right? it's not easy. Like not every chart on PulseChain has a chart like pTGC. So taking a look back at the moon math, you can see I'm saying just a 10x, but yeah, if pTGC is able to outperform PDI by a 10x by the time it makes it to $1, you can see that puts pTGC at 21 cents, right? So again, nobody really knows what's going to happen, but on top of this, right? So we're talking about purely price appreciation here, right? So for example, if PDI goes to $1 from here, you make a 45x, right? And you make no yield, right? And you don't actually increase your share in the pool, right? You never have like more than a shark position, or like more of a position than you had yesterday, right? Relative to the circulating supply. Whereas in something like pTGC, you do, right? And if you're holding your yield, it compounds, right? So, and we talked about this earlier in the stream where it's compounding on compounding on compounding, right? And it goes even with the layer 1 chain as well. When we're talking about PulseChain, like it's starting to heat up a little bit now, but I don't think it's really started yet, right? If we're talking about like in terms of cryptocurrencies and what they can do, I don't know if PulseChain's really started yet. So we're already seeing things like pTGC and UFO perform extremely well, and like we're saying, PulseChain hasn't even started. So we'll take a look here on UFO as well. You can see just the baseline. If UFO is able to match the performance of PDI going to $1, that would put UFO at 30% of a penny there, or 203. I believe that's 30% of it. Yeah, that's 30% of a penny. And then if we're able to pull just a 5x factor, and we'll do a 10x factor for UFO as well, but just a 5x factor would put UFO at like 1.5 cents, essentially, almost 1.6 cents. So again, guys, like nobody really knows what could happen. Nobody really knows what might happen, but you can kind of get a sense for where UFO might land. And I'll pull up the UFO PDI charts. We can also take a look at how that one's been trending out, because I think, yeah, you can kind of see. I mean, the trend is starting to form. I don't think any chart purely just goes absolutely just up and to the right forever. Like there will probably be retracements. And how I look at it, like I think being able to buy the dip on UFO and being able to watch some of these ratios, like I'm going to be, yeah, look at this. I'm going to be paying attention, right? You could have gone, if you had PDI, you could have gone 2 times as much UFO, right? And then when we're talking about X factors, like tell me guys, just like objectively, and I guess everyone can have a different opinion, but I think this chart looks bullish, right? If I was showing people this chart and I said, do you think this chart looks like it's made money? I feel like most people, majority of objectively looking at this chart would be like, yeah, it's trending up, it's making money, which means UFO is outperforming PDI, right? Like I don't know how many times, I'm probably going to repeat it a million different times.
Pop it on the monthly. Pop it on the monthly or the weekly.
On this chart, weekly?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Zoom out. Let's zoom out, because we know why that it looks like that. So
there you guys go.
Yeah, and let's not even forget that the thing we're comparing ourselves to right now, in turn, is the speculation that PDI is an actual RH ticker. Like that narrative alone is so hard to outperform, it's ridiculous. You're trying to outperform a narrative that a token is actually RHs and no one knows yet, and it's going to $1. So just thinking about it like that, it's impressive to outperform such a strong narrative.
Mm-hmm. Exactly,
here's the thing I
PDI,
think about. I'm sorry, go ahead, Con.
I was just going to say, PDI is not an easy chart to outperform. Like if you've seen that chart, not an easy one to outperform. Like try launching a cryptocurrency and outperforming PDI. You could try, but it might not happen to be that way. So
yeah, and there's not a lot of, if you're sitting in PDI, right? There's just not a lot of option. Like if you've got a position early on and you're just like, man, I need to take profits or something, because it's just you're just like, okay, where are you going to go if you want to take profits from PDI, right? So you're either going to go into RH tickers or what else, right? So the thing that's interesting is that with pTGC and UFO, if you make that move into those 2 tickers, you still have exposure to PDI. right? In the asset that's overperforming the index.
I'll also say as well, like if or when PDI hits $1 and you hold a bunch of PDI, like where does that, like what does that make you? Where does that get you, right? You get to hold a stable coin, right? But let's say the same logic applies. PDI goes to $1 and you have UFO at 3 cents, right? So your bag's worth, I don't know, right? But maybe your bag's worth a fortune. And then we looked at the moon yields earlier today, right? We're talking like for some of the bigger whales and stuff, right? Imagine at 3 cents, you're not going to be able to buy. I mean, I feel like majority of people aren't going to be able to buy a whale position at 3 cent UFO, but right now, it's probably more doable for maybe not so much like the average whoever, but just as someone who's like super serious about crypto, right? So when we're talking about if or when PDI goes to $1, what could happen to UFO, and then what will that actually mean for your APYs and such, right? So I think it was like 200% APY, and it was at like pretty high volumes, right? But if like you can imagine if PDI is at $1, where is the rest of the pulse chain going to be? Where are the volumes going to be? Like we've seen this chart on UFO. Like, what do you guys expect? Is this? I think it's a bullish chart, right? We're looking at it on the
and keep in
month,
mind,
on the
Kong,
week.
there's 153 million PDI in the UFO pool.
Yeah.
So if it goes to $1, that's $153 million in value that was just handed to the system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and asking in terms of is the chart looking bullish? I mean, if you go back to the chart for a second, you go back to the daily, just for a little higher resolution to prove my point. Typically in crypto, I mean, this is just my observation. You guys can tell me if I'm out to lunch or if you're seeing similar things. When you have faster corrections, when you have faster movement in volatility, that's typically healthy. It's these slow, drawn out, indecisive periods that tokens go through that typically shows a chart that's unhealthy. If you look at the UFO charts, the pTGC charts, they typically go up and then they come down. They're not doing these sideways things, which is very, very, very healthy. And so to the question of, why would you buy something that's already up 700x? I mean, this thing is healthy at the moment, and the rocket fuel hasn't been turned on yet, right? That's the biggest thing to understand here, is that these charts still look healthy. The rocket fuel for the whole system hasn't been turned on, which is going to propel this thing to highs that hasn't even been possible yet.
And graphics, if you look at that nice red candle, that drawdown there on the chart up there, what you'll realize is there's a reason for that. It's because PDI had a massive run and then it retracted from almost 4 cents back to around 2 cents. Mm-hmm. Because of the reflexivity in the LP, you're actually not staring at sell pressure on UFO. You're staring at the price coming back down in a certain range because of the liquidity bonding. There's a big difference between those two things. And this is where people are missing what they're seeing in a chart. When people are trying to do TA on these things, they're trying to do regular TA, not understanding what's actually happening within the reflexivity of the pools.
Oh, 100%. Oh, this is why, like, when people that I work with or anyone ask me is like, should I wait to buy a dip on UFO or pTGC? And I'm like, you might not want to play that game, because every single time, we've had that question. I've had that question come my way, and I'm like, and I give them the answer of like, be careful, because you might not get that dip. It literally, it dips like 5-10%. Like we're watching, should I buy when it goes a little lower? And then boom, it rockets back up. And so this is one of those systems where, you have to take what you can get. It doesn't like to dip. And it's not that the price, people don't like to sell. It's that what we can get to maybe is the whole rock and balloon analogy is, when the rock's attached to a bunch of balloons and the other balloons are inflating with more air, the balloon that is deflating and losing a little bit of air doesn't do a whole lot to what the rock wants to do, right? It doesn't impact the rock as much. It's still going to want to rise up. So you get into a system that is just unique and special.
Yeah, I see a lot of people like TAing it, but you have to also TA every single asset that we're connected to heavily. A lot of people think just because we are highly overbought that means we're going to correct. But if we're overbought, but everything we're connected to is oversold, we are actually oversold also, because you are one with what you are connected with. And let's be frank, PulseChain is way oversold. Like in the short term, yeah, overbought, but dude, we're below SAC rate. So what dip are you really looking for? You got a cheaper price than people got 3 years ago. You know what I mean? It's like, it's pretty easy to think about when you realize you're not operating in standard DeFi anymore. Like this is DeFi 3.0.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if you go compare the token holders in pTGC and UFO to token holders in Inc, Hex, PulseX, Pulse, you're going to see that this system is still early in comparison to those, or the holder counts are still early in comparison to the ecosystem that everyone's really betting on, and things can do 100, 200, 500, maybe even 1,000x. Like you see all these numbers floating around of what people think that this underlying ecosystem can do, and this ecosystem has far less holders. And so, like, if you're turbo, ultra, mega, infinitely bullish on PulseChain, this is like doubling down on that bet, saying, I actually believe in my own bullishness and I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. This is like doubling down on your own bet.
And more importantly, the system itself is constantly injecting hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars of LP doing the same exact thing.
Yep. It's pretty special.
Does anybody know how many holders there are of Hex?
That's going to
pull it up. It's like
that's
300 something thousand.
Yeah, but you, as you all know, that's not indicative of reality. So that's not going to be a very good place to go for information on that.
Sure, but it's to give a perspective, there are 9,500, so roughly 300,000 Hex holders, 9,500 pTGC holders, 3,500 UFO holders. So there's a lot of room for growth there, in my opinion.
I mean, when you're under 10,000 holders in any crypto, there's a lot of room for growth, brother.
Well, even if you were to go in and you were to speculate that the actual amount of holders for Hex is half that, or maybe even 2/3 of that, or
a tenth of that,
which to your point is probably exactly realistic. But even if you were to speculate, as just a wild friggin' guess, and you even cut that in half, you're still so far ahead in terms of holder count. And if you go to the real data, which is a tenth, I mean, you're still 1/3 of Hex, even at that point. And you're a tenth of Hex, if we take a tenth of what we're saying the holders are for Hex, for UFO. I mean, that's early, man. That's early, because Hex is still early in that sense. And you're even earlier for pTGC, and you're even earlier for UFO, which is just such a cool place to find yourself.
That is so true. Does anybody else have any comments before I do my last presentation?
I was going to say I'm about to wrap up here. If there's any last calcs you guys want to see, anything on the chat. But if not, then we can move on to the next thing.
I do want to see what the X's were. We're saying the price, but so like when you're doing the dollar PDI and like a 10x UFO, was that like a 400?
500x, 503x.
500x. Okay. 500x is not a small amount of X's. That's for sure.
I refreshed it. It's down to 463x, I think, with the PDI price moving up and stuff. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. So the reason why I wanted to talk about that X real quick, because at the beginning of the stream, we were talking about like the amount of X's that are possible and what that does to our liquidity, right? So you have to, as our price does X's, our liquidity is going to do X's as well. And as our liquidity does X's, our volume does X's. And the volume is what's going to pay that trustless yield that I think some people are looking for with this ecosystem, because it's unique to our system. If you do get yourself that shark position, and, let's say that we do that 400x, we could be looking at a growth of LP by a 200x. When it's the pair we're connected to doing the X's, it's an even multiplier. So if we do no X's, but the PulseChain ecosystem, our web does 100x, our LP will 100x. It's pretty simple that way. But as we get buys on top of that, it's not an even growth like that. So it's kind of like 50%. So let's just say if we do get up 400x from here, our LP web is 200x what it is today. Well, even at 200x, if we went back to that calculator, you know what I mean? We're even over what Kong even designed that calculator to do, right? It only goes up to 50 million. And where we're getting at is like, these numbers sound almost unreal, but they're actually really real with the system that RH has actually put us on. And it's really just thanks to RH that he created a platform for us to build a system like this that can use the X multiplier to benefit its holders and the PulseChain ecosystem as a whole.
100%. 100%.
Okay, Kong, are you done with sharing screen?
Yeah, all done. I'm all good.
Okay. All right. I'm going to share mine, go into my section here. I just wanted to go over here real quick and talk about how many X's pTGC has to do to be at a penny. 22X. It's right there. It's built into your site, Kong, and I really like that. 22X for it to be a penny, 220X for a dime. And then for UFO, and I just missed this when I was doing this earlier. It'd be a UFO has 152X to do before it reaches a penny. Okay, now let's talk about what pTGC and UFO could potentially do as PulseChain increases in value. I built a calculator some time ago, and there is a link to this in the video description. So you guys can download this and mess around with it yourself. The orange fields are your inputs, your blue are your outputs. So I set this for a 6-month time frame, Pulse doing a 10x. And I want to show you guys where I'm getting this number right here, this 2.5. What I did is I went to Dex Screener and I did a measurement from after the big run up. I started here and then I went to today. And when I did this yesterday, I ended up with a 30,000% move, which is a 320x. Divided that by the number of months that pTGC has existed, 13 months, and I came up with a 25x average per month. I toned that down by a factor of 10, and I made it a 2.5x. So with the Pulse starting price of where it is today, pTGC starting price where it is today, in a 6-month span, if Pulse 10x's and pTGC continues to move up against Pulse at a factor of 2.5x's per month, the end price at the end of 6 months would be 0.06 cents, or an average move per day of 2.82%. And then UFO, I did the same thing. I took a measurement from somewhere back here. You remember how UFO ran sideways for just month after month, and then it finally started moving up. I took a measurement and it wasn't as impressive, just a shorter history in my opinion. It was a 1,125% move divided by the numbers of months it has existed for a 1.61. And I toned it down again by a factor of 10. And in 6 months, UFO, with this starting price of where it is today, would at the end of 6 months it would do a 10x. So pTGC 150x, UFO 10x, or a modest 1.26% move per day. Does anybody have any comments on that? You can be plain. You're not going to offend me.
No, I think it's great. I think it goes to show pTGC's performance, and kind of PulseChain hasn't even really started yet, right? So like if you're already in the RH ecosystem, if you already think PulseChain is going to do extremely well, I think the same thing, like, because I was watching, and this might be a little bit sidetracked, but kind of on the same sort of topic. I was watching an RH stream, and he was kind of bragging about how many people he onboarded into Ethereum through Hex. And I think it's kind of true. I think I know a ton of people actually who never wanted to touch Ethereum, but did end up making a wallet so they could purchase Hex, right? So when you kind of think about it like that, I think UFO and pTGC will also, I think they'll have that same style where people will come into the RH ecosystem, where people will come into PulseChain to buy things like pTGC and things like UFO, right? Same thing people did with Hex. I think it's going to be like, you're going to have the new blue chip on PulseChain, which will be like the greatest currencies. So yeah, kind of, I think it goes to show like PulseChain hasn't even really started, and you still like, you have the machine working, right? So what happens when you like go into like full like sixth gear, right? Like, and you're full steam ahead or something like this. So
Yeah, and the best part, guys, and I know that you will appreciate it, is just the simplicity of it. Now, I'm not saying that it's simplistic from one vantage point, but it's very simplistic when you look at what's out there, and that this is all kind of an in-house thing. There's no extra things from outside of the system that have to be talked about, right? It's a closed, looped ecosystem, and it just continues to do what it does. And that's why you can run these numbers and extrapolate on them. And it's just all based off of what we think is possible for PulseChain. It makes it very powerful because, you know, the simpler it is, the better it is.
Zen, do you have any comments about this calculator?
Oh, not at all. I love that calculator.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, and then to what Mando said, just a lot of people have been saying this recently, but it's kind of like the easy button of PulseChain. You can hold a deflationary token. You can earn yield by just holding the tokens. You're also holding like 10, or you're holding more, but our large LP pools is like 10 of the blue chips of PulseChain just all in one token. So for someone who is new or doesn't really know which token to hold because there's like 10 to pick from and everyone's kind of telling you this is the one, you can kind of just hold one and hold them all. And you don't really need to think really past that. With UFO and pTGC, you can literally just hold. Some people don't like interacting with dApps. You don't have to. You can hold APY or earn APY just for holding. So it is actually a pretty simple process. As long as you can figure out how to turn slippage on PulseX, you're good.
I mean, if you're new to the Pulse network, people that are new, they're coming in, if they don't know what to buy in the Pulse network, they can literally get these two tokens, and then they got them in their wallet. They can just hold tight, and these tokens are bonded with all of the blue chip tickers on the Pulse network and all the RH tickers on the Pulse network. And once you got these tokens in place, then you can go and explore and read white papers and figure out what else you might want to get into. But these literally and figuratively are the easy buttons of the Pulse network. Well, guys, are there any other comments, or are we about to wrap it up?
Real quick before we go, just because we kind of were running those numbers and landing at like a 400x, can we show what the yield would be at for like a whale, a shark, a dolphin position at that 50 mil volume number?
You mean
This
over
is
here?
this is the Moon Math Show, Kong.
yeah, pull it up, Prairie.
Okay.
It seems like right there.
Try the demo. And you want to do pTGC?
Yeah, they're both, I think, going to say something similar because it's both just the 1% with reflections, and they're both volume based.
Okay.
So I could be wrong.
I think UFO will be more.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's flip the boat then if you can, but
Okay.
let's just do one at a time.
Good. This is a good idea, Zen. This is a great way to end the show. Okay, so we're in experimental mode for pTGC with the demo wallet. and we set the volume to $50 million. We're going to calculate the yields and see what this now just to remind you that the other positions are going to be a tenth of a whale position. So let's scroll down to the whale, and you guys can just do the mental math. And this is for this. I'm going to include staking in this. So I'm just going to double this yearly number. So this would be $8 million per year for a whale. And so that would be $800,000 for a shark. That is very exciting. $80,000 for a dolphin. Is that
the reason I like looking at this? Like, if we can get this protocol, and it's not just we, it's, you know, if PulseChain can hit numbers that are somewhat decent, there's a lot of mechanics that will get it to this point. But you can look at it and like Banana, like I'm sure at a point, or like Kong, like there's a number you have in your head, like I need the passive income of this a month to be financially free, to not go to my day job. And I like this calculator because you can actually set yourself with goals. And that goal could be increasing a position. Like if you have a dolphin now and you're like, ooh, I need 4 dolphins and this system to get to 50 million in volume to hit my number that I'm looking for to be financially free. Or maybe it's not the 50 mil, maybe you only drag it to 25 mil and you're like, okay, at 25 mil in volume, I will need that shark position to be financially free. And once I get there, you know, I'm getting this amount per month and so on and so forth. So you can kind of plan your future out accordingly. I think a lot of people are month to month with their bills. Not as far as like they don't have a savings, but like you pay your bills month to month, right? Like your mortgage comes up once a month, your phone bill comes up once a month. You probably calculate your food on how much you spend once a month on food, etc. So you can kind of figure out what position you're going to need. If you're in it for like the passive income play, which the system was designed as a store of value passive income play. So if you're using the system as it was designed, not just for the X's and out, you can see what position you'll need and the volume you'll need to make those dreams happen.
Thank you for emphasizing that. So I agree. You know, I look at my expenses I'm actually looking at it at a monthly.
Yeah. So then if you could then see, like, you could see what you need, if that's an increase in position size or you just increase the volume. Like, okay, I like my position. I'm not going to put any more in, but I do need the volume to get to this to be financially free and utilize the system as it's intended.
Right. Okay. Let's look at UFO.
And after you're done that, if you don't mind pulling up my screen as well.
Okay.
Just after your example. It's all good.
Okay. UFO with the experimental, the demo wallet, $50 million in volume. Let's look at what these creatures would garner. A whale, $2.85 million. Shark, and this is per year. Shark, $285,000. Dolphin, $28,000. And those are reflection rewards only. It doesn't include any LPing if a guy has his UFO LP'd.
Yes.
All right, Kong, you're next, buddy.
All right, and then I'll I think we're all done. Are we all done with
I think
kind of
so, Kong.
the
I
moon
think
math
so.
and stuff? We'll wrap it up here, and I'll talk about like the site and stuff. All right, so yeah, if any of you guys are wondering what site we were using today, we were using lookintoptgc.com. Some of the features we were looking at, like with some of the reflections and stuff, are paid features, right? So there is previews as well. Like we didn't I don't even think I don't think we hit like the tip of the iceberg for some of the stats on the site and stuff. But yeah, there's a couple of previews and stuff if you guys also want to like take a look at kind of this is all example data, but you can kind of get an idea for some of the charts on the site as well. You can see here the sea creatures with APY. We were looking at this earlier. But yeah, you can get an exact idea for some of the things on the site, and you can kind of see on share my screen a little bit later. Or I'll sign in actually, but the premium members, they'll get little banners here showing when new features are coming out, and there's always new features being added. So I'll talk about the price right now. It is on sale. So premium, just the regular premium is only $17 per month, and that's paid annually, so once per year. And then I would create your login and your password and send it to you. If you want more information, it's very well documented on the upgrade page. But kind of talking a little bit into the differences between premium and premium plus, I will say if you're a developer and you kind of want to look more in depth into some of the stats and stuff and make your own compilations, because all the data is pretty much here, right? So if you want to do whatever, I would say premium plus is definitely for you. Premium plus also comes with like a platform tutorial. It also comes with like feature banners, so you get notified pretty much as soon as something new is dropped. And usually there's also tutorials that come with that, and that's for premium plus only as well. So keep that in mind. I will also say, like, the reason why this is priced the way it is I think it's priced with the market, number one, and then number two, PulseChain data it's not the easiest data to grab. So when you're looking at things like Ethereum, right, when you're looking at other blockchains like L1s that have been out for quite a long time, there's lots of services that kind of allow you to build like different like graphs and like different, like even like Dune Analytics, for example. You can do like different dashboards on there with Ethereum, but PulseChain is not supported. As well as if you guys see the block explorer and stuff, you can kind of get a sense, like that's kind of like the infrastructure of PulseChain a little bit to a certain extent when you compare it to like Ethereum and stuff, right? So what's some of the data points and some of the things are very difficult to grab, and it's like you have to, I don't want to go too in depth into it, but it's multiple layers of like sequencing to get some of these data points out of the blockchain, and then out of the blockchain is one thing, and then onto the site is even another thing as well. So that's one of the reasons why it's priced the way it is. It's just the regular, I would say this is like the regular market price plus the PulseChain data. I would say it's a little bit more scarce, right? And I would say it's a little bit harder to gather to a certain extent. So I will say that as well. For anyone kind of inquiring about the price, but yeah, there's tons of documentation. I'm not going to go over absolutely everything right here, right now, but yeah, if you want to learn more, and if you also want to kind of get in early, because what I'll say is this is gonna be the cheapest price. Like it is on sale right now for another day and 6 hours, and then as soon as it's December 8th at midnight UTC, the sale is over, right? So yeah, this pricing is never going to be offered again. And keep in mind, with this price as well, you get to unlock all the features that's on the site right now, and then there's only going to be more features added. Like we've even talked about some like tweaks and some new, like I've talked about, like we were getting UFO yields for like LP and like pTGC locking and staking rewards, like kind of the same thing you were seeing today, just more, right? There's only going to be more and more and more stuff added. So keep that in mind as well. Like you pretty much get in at the lowest rate that the site's ever been at, and you get all the features that there is now, plus anything that gets developed into the future. So yeah, up to you guys. But kind of goes into also what TGZen was saying. If you want to kind of plan out, like if especially if you're big into pTGC and UFO, I think it might help you get a better sense of also what's going on behind the scenes, because I don't think we've shared close to everything or anything, like everything that's on the site. But yeah, more stuff coming, more stuff on the way. We'll probably tease more things coming as well. But yeah, just for anyone who's interested as well, like this is a service or a product provided for the community here. But it is paid. So
Kong, real quick, so I know for a fact that you do have a wallet address that people can send to pay. Is there a way for people who don't want to dox their wallet address to like Venmo you or anything like that?
I would consider like a PayPal or something like this.
Okay.
I would also say, if you don't want to dox your wallet, send from an exchange, like send ETH from an exchange, or use something like Change Now and then just route the order to my wallet, and then I'm not going to be able to see who's the receiving address. It'll just be the change now receiving address. And I also don't really care who's sending me whatever. Like I tried to respect people's privacy. I don't even try. I do respect people's privacy. So yeah, if you are sending, I recommend from an exchange, or use like a routing like Change Now and just like route the order to my wallet. So that's what I recommend.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to ask that question for anyone that was listening.
And then
if they did want to pay in a different way.
I'm also considering I might automate some of the payments, and then this way as well, like it would be completely kind of pseudo anonymous in a way where like I would know like the transaction hash and like the login and password, but I wouldn't know like who it is. I wouldn't know I wouldn't necessarily know who you are, but I don't know. I don't know if it's I don't know if there's kind of diminishing returns. I think I'd rather work on some of the actual stats.
100%.
But yeah, that is something I'm thinking about as well, just because I know that it might also like, yeah, it might be better. I don't know how much people like interacting with random people in crypto to send them things rather than like a robot or something. So
yeah, I think Change Now would be a very easy way to do that.
and I agree.
We might want to do maybe Banana. I don't want to add something to Banana's list, but if there was a little tutorial showing someone how to send that to you anonymously, would maybe help.
That's a good idea. But yeah, I'll try and provide I'll provide more documentation like how to send payment anonymously and
Tom,
and things like this. So yeah.
all the money has to go right back into that pTGC website chart, bro. It's got to go.
Yeah, it's a buy up the chart again.
Exactly.
No, that's an awesome site. I mean, I about came unglued when I saw the locking bars, you know, and you can see when everybody's unlocking. I was like, oh yeah, man.
Yeah, that's a good point,
it's
guys.
true. Kong's true. It takes a lot of work.
Oh no, yeah.
Because of the fact that, you know, PulseChain, it'll probably have something just like ETH and all these in the future, but it's harder to pull data. So, you know, a workman's worth his wages. It's a phenomenal site, and anybody who's going to be here for the long haul, it's kind of a no brainer to lock in
And
that cheap
I'll
price.
add one more thing to the price as well. I'll say with some of the contracts, like, and with something like Hex, I will say like the contract, it's especially on Ethereum, it's very like it was almost designed for you to be able to pull like extremely enormous amounts of data from that contract, and you can just read it directly. And Ethereum makes it very simple and easy. pTGC, you can do the similar thing, but on a much smaller scale. So if you want to know like 8,000 addresses, like information for 8,000 addresses, like you have to go and find the information for 8,000 addresses, and it takes extra time. Other contracts like Hex, like it's able to it's already indexed some of this information in the contract, so it's able to kind of present the data to you more cleanly. Whereas like I will say in pTGC and UFO on some of those charts, you have to compile everything. Like from like one address at a time type of thing. So it's not easy. It takes up a lot of time. And it's one thing to grab the data points, and then also to present it is another thing as well. So yeah, keep that in mind with like price and stuff like that as well, guys. So yeah.
Awesome, Kong. Thanks so much, man.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a wrap, unless anybody has any final comments.
No, great stream. That was fun, as always. It's always fun to look at the numbers and to see them see that real moon math, man. It's good stuff.
Feels like PulseChain's about to blow. That's what it feels like to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially with Ethereum over $4,000 today.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, do we know, before we go, do we know what that ETH bag is worth now in terms of profits? Did anybody take a look at that?
I think it was like 700 million. I saw
It's
42
million in profits today. It's just getting started.
Okay.
That's
Awesome, guys.
Yes, sir. Well,
Real quick,
go ahead.
yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you guys for coming up here and doing this stream with me. It means the world to me. And Kong, thank you so much for taking the time to put all that data on that website. It's really priceless. how amazing that is for our community. So I just want to specifically say thank you to you for that. And then, you know, of course, Mando, Graphics, and Banana, thank you for being here and just helping educate on pTGC and UFO. It means the world.
Yeah. Thank you.
You too.
Trying to do what I can.
Hey, my pleasure, man.
Yep. Well, Graphics, Kong, Mando, Zen, it's a pleasure to have you on the channel. And everybody, hope you got your bags packed. And you might consider throwing in a carry-on. All right, guys. Have a great
Ready
weekend.
for liftoff.
Take care.
See you guys.
See ya.